Morning, everyone. So, morning. First one I've done of these of a Labour government, and they have wasted absolutely no time at all. Just to point out in terms of what Labour can do and what can't do straight away, because everyone's very eager, and every time we have a new election, then technology's moved on to the point where we've got more of this sort of called 24/7 news, and everyone's really eager to find out exactly what's going on. I have no idea what is happening here. Sorry. That is completely the wrong thing. Boom. That's better. Whirlwind. Graham didn't point out to me I'm using the wrong camera. Anyway, so in terms of what's happened straight away, so what Labour can do, what they can't do, and how long it'll take for things to happen. So ministers obviously can change guidance straight away. They've got statutory instruments to change some bits of legislation. So, for example, one of the big things they've done straight away is Ed Miliband has removed what they call de facto ban on wind farms. It's a de facto ban because although it's onshore, although the Conservatives didn't make it illegal to build onshore wind farms, their guidance meant there was a presumption that any planning applications would fail. Basically, the guidance set out if there was any objection to them at all, then the planning application would have to fail, which means that every planning application would fail. So people didn't bother. We never got any more onshore wind farms when that was implemented. That's all gone. Now, that doesn't mean to say we get a new wind farm tomorrow. So obviously there's a difference between changing the guidelines and actually getting the results of it, which is why they have to do so much so quickly to begin with. There's a super chat coming there, but to do that quickly from Ivan Ambrose, 4.99. Thank you very much. Says, I'm still on Clyde now that number reached 326 in the early hours of last Friday morning. Yeah, it's sailed past that. They've got more than enough. It's absolutely fine now. Everything they said they could do, they can do, as long as they've got the plan for it. But given that they're really moving, they do. There are, so there's things that ministers can just do, and they have done. Rachel Reeves made the big announcement about changing some of the planning rules as well. But some things will need legislation. In fact, most things will need legislation, for which you need Parliament in session. Parliament's going to take a while to get up. The problem with having the election in July as opposed to, say, May, if we'd have had it like in 1997, it was on, I think it was May the 1st, in fact, which meant, so it takes a couple of weeks for Parliament to properly get up and running anyway, because you've got to get your MP. We still don't really have many MPs have to be sworn in before they can take part in any parliamentary business. Otherwise, you actually get sacked as an MP if you take part in any parliamentary business before you've been properly sworn in. In theory, you're supposed to make a maiden speech as well, but there's so many new MPs that just whenever this happens, the rules will be relaxed on that. So the King's speech is it's not even this, it's next Wednesday. And then in theory after that, we've got the summer recess. Now, there's a bit of a mention of the summer recess. The summer recess isn't going to be cancelled because civil servants will have already booked holidays. Some MPs will have done as well, as it happens. And Keir Starmer said, that people need to have those holidays. But he has talked about using some of it. So I don't know whether the plan is 2 weeks off, then 2 weeks back, then 2 weeks off again. So I don't know about that. We'll have to find out about that. But summer gets in the way. And then when they come back after summer anyway, then you've got a few weeks, then it's the conference season. So when we talk about this 100 days, or what you're going to do in the first 100 days, what happened in 1997 is so it took a couple of weeks to get Parliament properly up and running, but ministers could do things in the meantime. Then they had the rest of May, they had the whole of June, and they had most of July with Parliament in session before the summer recess. So they had a lot, they had time to put a lot through Parliament. Now they don't. The other problem that Labour have is, so what's supposed to happen as you build up towards a general election is the opposition are supposed to be invited in for talks with the civil service so that they can lay out their plans and find out what's feasible and what can be done quickly and first, and so that so that the civil servants and the potentially new ministers know what they want from each other. But Rishi Sunak blocked those talks for a long time. So Labour haven't actually had many of those talks. So again, this was all Rishi Sunak's salt in the earth as much as possible. But I have to say, Labour have moved incredibly quickly. You had David Lammy. He was made Foreign Secretary on Friday. Saturday he was in Germany. Sunday he was in Poland and Sweden. Then he was talking about the security agreement with the EU. Now, remember, the security agreement is what the EU want as well. We do as well, of course. But in terms of like the give and take, because they're really rushing to repair the damage with our, European neighbours. So David, and he'd already been working as well. He'd been writing articles in French magazines. He'd been already visiting different European centres. He's gone out there to basically say, we're very different. We're your friends, and we want to be much closer. And because there's other ministers who want things as well. So there's in terms of other government departments, DEFRA want the veterinary agreement, the SPS agreement. The Department for Trade will want, things like mutual recognition of qualifications, the deal for performers. But the EU want things as well. So I was doing a discussion on my own channel with Mike Galsworthy of European Movement yesterday. And what Labour are doing is, we were discussing, they're front loading with what the EU want, which is the security agreement. So we're basically saying, as an act of good faith, we'll talk about this first. This is what, we're both really keen on. And then hopefully the stuff that is more in our interest sort of comes a bit later. The Ed Miliband thing with the onshore, that's immediate. We don't get the onshore wind farm, as I say, straight away, but we now can. There's so many changes so quick. They've really hit the ground running when, as I say, they've had things up against them. They haven't had those talks with the civil service. Do you notice yesterday Keir Starmer had to basically apologise to the civil service as well? Very unusual. He published a statement, and it's published on the government website, where he's praised the civil service, and he said that he supports them, values them, respects them. And this, a new prime minister doesn't have to do that. It's nice, but they don't have to do it. The reason he's had to do it is because the Tories have broken relationships everywhere. We concentrate on the fact that they've damaged relations with our European neighbours, but they've damaged relations in the country as well. There's a reason why politics is at an all-time low in terms of trust. The Tories were just blaming everyone. They were getting to the point where they were about to blame the Women's Institute for something or other, I'm sure. Ivan Ambrose 499 again says, do you think Lindsay Hoyle will be reinstalled as Speaker? Yes. When Parliament returns today. Yeah, absolutely. And there is no problem with that. I'll keep pointing out, Lindsay Hoyle, yes, he was about as useful as a chocolate teapot in the last Parliament, but that is because the majority of Parliament were rogues. They had no regard. They were you had this Parliament develop over time, the Conservative Party develop over time on purely self-interest lines. And their behaviour was beyond the pale. And to be honest, you could say Lindsay Hoyle wasn't very good. There were some things he had no power to do anything about. There were other things, he wasn't very good. But it's not like there would have been anyone better. What you needed was another Betty Boothroyd, but, she was in the Lords, and unfortunately she's passed away since. But with a Parliament of MPs where the majority respect Parliament, Lindsay Hoyle will be fine. I'm going to confidently predict you won't really have a problem with Lindsay Hoyle in the next Parliament, assuming Labour behave themselves. But I fully expect Labour to behave themselves. The only people that are not, I noticed Nigel Farage has turned up today. Everyone else, all the Reform UK are going, oh, we're here now. The fox is in the hen house. It's like, mate, everyone turned up yesterday. Where were you? I think Lee Anderson turned up yesterday. The rest of them, because remember, he's different. He's a former miner. He's delighted to be earning 6 times their national average salary now. for basically talking a load of rubbish. The rest of them are just millionaire playboys who are bored. Someone else manages their money. Someone else runs their businesses. So they're just bored. They're basically millionaire playboys. And that's it. Sugar Free saying, is the PMQs today? No, there's not been PMQs for ages. No. Parliament's not like, we don't even have a full suite of MPs yet. They have to be sworn in before they can do anything. And then Parliament doesn't officially open until next Wednesday. So we have the state opening of Parliament next Wednesday in the King's Speech. So there'll be no PMQs then either. And then it's like summer recess. So we're not going to get a PMQs for a long time. Not for a long time. I'll tell you what, though. So just as a little side thing about PMQs. So yeah, there is a process to getting Parliament back up. And also remember, because there are so many, apparently it's the most new MPs since 1979. So, even though there was a big landslide in 1997, there weren't, because it's not just to do with seats changing hands, of which there have been a lot, but also a lot of MPs stood down. I think it might have been a record number. I'm not sure about that, but it's close to it. Can they shorten the summer recess? They can, and I think Starmer has talked about that, but there will still. So that's what I mean. I want to wait on the details of that. I know he wants to, because part of it's like really clear Labour know they need to move quickly, and that is because, like I say about the onshore wind farm, so you can remove the block on them. That's done. That's finished. If someone puts a planning application in tomorrow for a wind farm, then the expectation is that it should succeed as long as it's a credible application, right? So that is now in place. But that doesn't mean, there may be someone who's been waiting on this because they knew Labour were going to do it and they're ready to go in. But that doesn't mean a planning application does go in tomorrow. And when it does, obviously it takes time to consider that application. And the application could still fail because there are still standards, there's still requirements, right? And part of those requirements are local objections. We know there's a lot of NIMBYism about, sometimes from surprising sources. And so, yeah, the time between making this change and getting new wind farms installed, could be a couple of years, could be several years. And this is why they have to move quickly, because, some of these things we won't see the benefits for several years. So we need to get started now so that we can see them before the election, because Labour can't just roll into the next election and say, right, we've done all this, because that's what the Tories have been doing for years, isn't it? Green shoots. Labour can't use that argument because that's what the Tories have been doing. Oh, yeah, we'll put all these things in place. It's going to absolutely yield benefits, but it'll be after the election, so you have to vote for us again. And they did it every year. 2015, green shoots of recovery. 2017, Brexit will be the thing, but you've got to vote for us again. 2019, Brexit was still the thing, but you've got to vote for us again. So Labour can't go into the next election going, yeah, we've totally put everything in place, but you have to vote for us again. They've got to show people improvements. Alex saying a higher number stood down in 2010. Are related to the expenses. That's interesting. But nonetheless, it is the greatest. There wasn't as great a change in party seats, I suppose, in 2010. But it is I do know it is the greatest number of new MPs since 1979. Anyway, we'll go over a few little thing. Steve's Richard saying, I note the BBC are now running stories about how rubbish everything is. The BBC have been running some pretty appalling headlines as well. Like, they've talked about with the French elections, the National Rally will have to await their historic moment, as if they're destined or should be destined to take over. Some of the BBC headlines on a few issues have been absolutely appalling. Someone pointed out yesterday after the bombing of Ukrainian hospitals, and the headline is Russia bombs these Ukrainian hospitals, which is right. That headline's fine. And then someone pointed out, but when a hospital gets bombed in Gaza, it's just like hospital bombed in Gaza. It's like, who bombed it now? Again, there's no consistency to BBC. Then you had Laura Kunsberg at the weekend interviewing Ed Davey, and she said, well, congratulations, I suppose. What the hell sort of attitude is that? The BBC need a proper clear out. Proper clear out. The problem is, of course, as soon as it starts to happen, do Labour have to go at it slowly, because otherwise everyone else goes, oh, they're installing their Trotskyites into the BBC now. Claire Scott 199 super chat, thank you. How will they seat all the Labour MPs? So there are only so many seats on the government side. What usually happens is mostly MPs, like most of the time, you don't jam MPs in anyway. That's for like, but there will be times when they do all need to go in there. You often find they'll just stand at the entrance, but they can also sit on the other side. Like, they're not that precious about it, in all honesty. Some, like, very junior, brand new MPs will just go, do you know what? I want to sit down. They'll sit on the opposition side. It's fine. It's not a problem. So this does happen. We should have a proper parliament. We don't have a modern parliament. We should. A modern parliament doesn't even have the two sides, because that's ridiculous, because you don't know how big the government side's going to be. So you have that sort of like horseshoe arrangement, don't you? So you have, you usually have a bit at the front for the actual ministers, or the senior ministers, like, the cabinet it would be. And then you have like a horseshoe arrangement around it, and you decide one ends, the government will start, and it'll just end where it ends. And then that's what we should have in Doncaster. But that's what we should have, a modern parliamentary building that's actually fit for purpose, with voting machines, so you don't have to traipse off and walk through a door to vote. Voting machine. Anyway, we don't. And I suspect we're not going to get one. Should Labour do something about BBC? Yes. Labour, my three things, right, my top priorities are electoral reform, media reform, and Brexit, right? Now, Brexit, I'm sort of satisfied with their moves so far. Electoral reform, we will see. Media reform, we know something's coming. We don't know what. We know something's coming. But in terms of I strongly suspect we're not going to get a media reform that I would like, because that's probably going too far, too fast. But the BBC is by far and away the easiest to deal with, because it is under the BBC appointments are for the government. Now, I don't think they should be. I think they should be I think there should be a special select committee of MPs, cross-party MPs, where no individual party, no matter how many MPs they have in the Commons, has, I would say, the largest party in Parliament should have no more than a third of the seats on that panel. I think it should be a real cross-party committee, and they should make appointments. In fact, I think, and I've said this before, I think the BBC board should be that cross-party group of MPs, and they should select an independent chair with experience of broadcasting, where, as I say, there will be no balance of power. The largest party can have a third of the seats on that board, or maybe 40%, but not a majority. That's what I would do. I would make it, the whole process. You can't make it politically independent, of course, it's state-owned, but you can make it that it has to have cross-party support. Stop a single party having all the power. But at the same time, the position is that the government can make appointments, and they should absolutely be having a clear out. But there we go. Waywatcher Green, £5 super chat, thank you. Says, where can we go for decent headlines, Phil? Lost my rag with the Guardian, too many times to go back there. So, I mean, the best one is Byline Times. There are still some things in there which I don't think anyone ever always meets the standard for me. Byline Times is probably the best. However, Byline Times, there's a particular way of reporting that they do, which really does raise some very key issues, but also misses some others out. So, I mean, you just have to go about. I mean, the media is the media. At the end of the day, we all have to use it. I mean, I will still carry on. I mean, I read a whole range. I mean, I read the Telegraph, the Times, the Mail, the Express. I draw the line at the Sun and the Spectator. Although every now and then someone will wave an article in front of my nose and I'll read that. as well as the Guardian, the Independent, the National Record, Belfast Times, the Belfast Telegraph. There's various outlets I read through the week, and I'll still continue to do so. But yeah, the Guardian did piss me off this election with total lack of coverage of tactical voting, which was a huge issue. Hardly anything on the Greens or the Liberal Democrats, scrutiny or otherwise. It was absolutely appalling. But that is the environment we live in. Ivan Ambrose again, another £4.99 super chat. It's throwing it out today. It seems the first scandal for Reform UK since the elections emerged the AI or fake candidates. So yeah, I'm hoping we haven't got any proof that's real, and it has to be noted that the AI candidate you may be talking about has been discovered to be a real person. So they have found a couple of them. Hopefully they're just paper candidates. Paper candidates are fine. Paper candidates are just someone, do you want to be our candidate? It's like, well, I don't really want to campaign or anything. No, it's fine. Just be on the ballot paper. That's fine. As long as it's a real person, they can do what they like. You get that in local. Sometimes paper candidates win in local elections. It's quite funny. What do you mean I've won? Yeah, you've won. Oh, what? Oh, shit. That's fine. It's not fine if they're not real. But what is amazing to me, hopefully they are completely real. Hopefully they are completely real. Do I read Viz? No, only occasionally. Viz posts some jokes on Twitter. I'll occasionally see the odd Viz joke on Twitter. The joke letters. I don't really go to it for serious news, if I'm honest, no. The Morning Star, no, and I'll tell you why as well, because you think, it's a bit biased, Phil. It's the reason why I'll read the Telegraph and the Times and the Mail and things like that is because they are influential, whereas the Morning Star aren't. Same with the Canary. Actually, I do occasionally read the Canary, but it's like it's bias. They're just as biased as each other, and they're both deliberately trying to misinform their readers. But the difference is the Morning Star don't influence that many people, so they're not going to have a major impact on voting patterns. They have some impact, but they don't have a major impact on voting patterns, whereas the Telegraph do. So I need to know what the Telegraph are saying, because that message is getting out to more people. Apart from anything else, like in the Telegraph and the Times and the Mail and things like that, they're amplified. Because, and I was talking to this with Mike yesterday, one of the things they should do at the BBC is ban them from doing paper reviews. Like, how mad is that? The BBC actually promote their rivals in the media. What do they do? If they have programs where, let's look at the papers. What, your rivals? And who discusses the papers? Who do they get around that table to discuss the papers? The people who write them. They invite newspaper journalists on, their rivals, newspaper journalists on, to talk about newspaper articles. The whole system's mental. Absolutely mad. I don't know why any broadcaster would want to do that. But obviously Labour, if Sky want to do it, or ITV, well, that's up to them. They're private companies. But, the idea that the BBC do it is utterly ludicrous. The BBC should be reporting in the interests of the people. Their state broadcaster should be reporting in the interests of the people, should not be given a platform. The Daily Telegraph have got their own platform, right? Let them use that. They've got their own. Leave them out there. Don't invite Telegraph people on. Do they do reviews of BBC articles in the Telegraph? No, they do not. But anyway. See if there's any more little questions there towards the end. New housing, whatever's built, the vital issue is energy efficiency. UK had to adopt full passive house now. So there's a lot of things they need to get right about this. So you're quite right to point out it's not enough to simply build lots of new houses. They have to get it right, because remember, and housing is so important to everything. Quality of housing, and Labour know this because they've mentioned it throughout their, sort of their mission, so to speak. For example, housing is part of their healthcare strategy, because if you've got damp and therefore mouldy housing, you're going to develop illnesses. There's other crap aspects to housing that can make you ill as well. physical and mental illnesses. So housing is really important. So it's important that you don't just stick bricks in the ground, that you get the build right. You have to build them in the right places, the right sort of housing. And also, we were talking about Reform UK. Again, take away their arguments. When Reform UK say, oh, the reason you can't get access to decent housing is because of immigrants. If they can get access to decent housing, do you know what? That argument falls apart. Same with anything else. Can you get access to decent healthcare? Yes, then you can't blame immigrants for, like all their arguments go away as long as people can have access to the things they should have access to. Just deliver that. I say just deliver it as if it's easy. We know it's not easy or quick. I remember after the last Labour government, if we talk about NHS waiting lists, which is a really visible sign, they were still coming down in 2010. They started coming down straight away and they were still coming down. So after 13 years in power, improvement, and when it was noted as the number one healthcare system in the world, things were still getting better. That soon changed, but things were still. So, you look now at the situation and the fact that at the time we had an economy that was growing and now we don't. And you look at the situation and we know that we have to get that investment in quickly. And we're not all going to like where it's coming from, by the way. And get those waiting lists coming down again. Like, do we believe that the waiting list can come down as quickly? They may come down more steeply, but can they come down, after 13 years? Are we going to get 13 years of this Labour government? I hope electoral reform that would stop them being in majority power for that time, but it would at least keep them in power for longer, so that we can see this through. And the people they'll form a coalition with will also want NHS waiting lists coming down. But, you just look at the situation. I look at the improvements that were made in the last Labour government and how those improvements were still being made over 10 years later. And it just sort of tells you we're not going to, we need to get noticeable improvements. We need people to feel the improvements, but it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a very long time. Most important part of the housing equation is location and proper planning. Can only be done at the national government level. Well, at the moment, yes, indeed, it is going to be. I am mindful of the fact that Starmer's big thing is local decisions being made locally. But it also has to be said that in the here and now, they are making national decisions. So they haven't devolved that decision making yet. Today, actually, ironically, it's not really ironic, but Keir Starmer's meeting with the Metro mayors today. Remember, his big thing is engagement with people. So that'll be quite. I'd like to sit in that room, wouldn't you? You're going to have Keir Starmer. You're going to have a load of Labour Metro mayors. You're going to have Ben Houchen, who's been caught out in a lie. He's written an open letter to Keir Starmer saying, "Oh, I'm terribly delighted that you want to engage with me. Now about these Teesside projects that I want to get finished." And everyone's pointing out, Ben, mate, you said those projects had already been delivered as part of your re-election campaign. You said you'd already delivered them. So Keir Starmer can turn around to him and say, "Oh, those projects you're talking about? Yeah, I thought you said you'd already done them. Have you not done them? Were you telling a little fib, Ben?" But we will see. I suspect it's not going to be that in your face. But anyway, let's just see if we'll catch up with a couple of others. As you say, Starmer does deliver because of fear of populism. Then populism's worked. No, he's not going to deliver because of fear of populism. He's delivering because he wants to deliver. What I'm saying is, if he delivers, that diminishes populism. If you look at Reform UK's, they call it a contract rather than a manifesto. It's 28 pages. It was like 28 pages. Rubbish. But if you look through their policies, shall we say, that they were proposing, yes, there's all the anti-immigration stuff, but there was also a load of stuff to appeal to people on low incomes struggling with the cost of living. Like, oh, we'll raise the income tax threshold to £20,000. Oh, we're going to save all this money by cutting waste and pump it into the NHS. Or it was never going to do it, obviously. But all the stuff that appeals to people. So you look at those 4 million voters they got. That's not 4 million racists. right? That's some racists. And it's a load of people who just believed his lies about, because they're looking at Labour, right? Well, they're looking at the Tories who've actually crushed their living standards. Then they're looking at Labour and the way the press are describing it. Oh, this is all a bit tinkery, isn't it? Oh, this isn't going to change very much. It's just tinkering. We're basically going to get a competent government. And then they look at, like, they might look at the Lib Dems and the Greens, and it's like, well, they're not really making a big song and dance about it as far as the media is concerned, because the media are not reporting on the Lib Dems or Greens. So then they're left with Reform UK, who are on the media 24/7, and they're saying, oh, we're just going to whack up the tax thresholds. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do the other. It's going to be brilliant for people on low incomes. That's where a lot of their vote came from. It wasn't from racists. It was from people who are struggling to afford food, right? They were struggling to afford food. So Labour put those people in a better position for the next election. Reform UK lose those. I mean, they'll probably lose them anyway. I've done a video on my own channel for 12 today. Reform UK, I reckon, are going to collapse under the weight of their own piracy. Like Nigel Farage and all that lot, they've been used to just striding around like pirates across the political environment, because their political environment has been the media. They're in Parliament now. Parliament's got standards. I know we don't think much of the standards after the behaviour of the last Parliament, but they do have standards. Remember, this is the same Parliament that held Boris Johnson to account. It's the same Parliament that held, the likes of Peter Bone to account, and a few others as well. It's the same Parliament that held to account a guy who looked up porn on his phone, right? This is not a Parliament that's letting Nigel Farage off. And apart from anything else, this is now a Parliament where the majority of them, whether you'll believe it or not at the moment, the majority of them believe in rules. They're not arseholes. So Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe and Richard Tice and whoever the other one is, I know Lee Anderson is a different beast. I can't remember. The fifth guy they sneaked, he's another millionaire playboy. They're going to find themselves. They're not the fox in the hen house. They're going to discover exactly what they are very soon, I think. Graham's saying they've dropped the term levelling up. No, they haven't. No, levelling up's still there. But they're just going to actually do levelling up. It's Angela Rayner's job title. Have they? They've changed it. Oh, Graham's telling me they've changed it. Why? Oh, bloody hell. Yeah, but it can also be real. They can say that we can deliver what the Tories didn't. We can discuss this on Friday. I don't like this. I think they should have kept it. I think they should have said, we're going to actually deliver because then next election, the Tories are all words, we're action. Their words, we're action. What do you want? I think it's a bad decision. Anyway, we've gone well over. I'm sorry about that. We've gone over. There's so much happening. Or so much in terms of change. As I say, the actual this is one of those things. It's like going to be really awkward because they're doing lots of things which will result in changes. But we also know that voters have had the Tories saying that for ages. Oh, we've done this thing with Brexit. It's going to yield results in like 50 years' time, right? So whereas Labour need to deliver those changes, but we know some things will happen straight away. Like anyone at threat of no fault eviction, if they're all right over summer, then they'll be all right because that's going over summer, isn't it? There are some things that are materially going to improve people's lives over summer, but a lot of the things, because it needs investment and building and so on, are going to take place over a series of years. But people just must feel it. That's all. We must feel it for the next election. That's Labour's job. But anyway, there we go. It was only a slogan, levelling up, but it could have been real. There's nothing wrong with the term. There's nothing wrong with the term at all. Make Brexit work is a slogan. Levelling up is a policy. But anyway, Frank Lamosa, straight in at the end, just before I'm going to clock off. £10 super chat, but no message. Thank you very much for that. With that, I will love you and leave you. Have a great day. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel, of course. And until next time, I will see you later. Right, right. Ivan is being awkward today, but thank you very much. £50 super chat. Rwanda scheme gone. So relieved. That was my most shameful piece of legislation in my nearly 40 years on this planet. 40 this coming Saturday. Already had early birth present with Labour's huge win and massive majority. I will just add to that my favourite meme about that. So when Keir Starmer talked about wanting like Friday evenings at 6 p.m. for his family, and obviously he made the point that, okay, sure, emergencies and stuff like that, but they're talking, oh, he's going to clock over 6 p.m. He's going to clock over. We're going to have Angela Rayner in charge, which was actually them saying Angela Rayner's hardworking, if they thought about it. And then people pointed out that it was officially announced that the Rwanda plan was dead, and Keir Starmer did that after 6 p.m. on a Friday. Because in actual fact, you know, he was still appointing his cabinet after 6 p.m. on Friday. He was working. They were working all weekend. Officially, the first day of the government was yesterday, but they were working all weekend themselves. As I say, David Lammy was jetting all over Europe. But yes, thank you for that super chat. Thank you for disrupting our stream. Thank you very much. But yeah, the Rwanda plan completely dead and buried. They're all white. The Daily Mail's doing its nut. That's fine. I'm comfortable with that outcome. The Daily Telegraph is all doom and gloom. As far as the Daily Telegraph's concerned, the country's going to sink beneath the waves next Tuesday. So again, you know, I'm comfortable with that outcome as well. Be quite hilarious what happens when their readers, who were already in both of those papers intending to support Labour over the Conservatives anyway, if when they start to actually see things getting a bit better. But this time we are really ending it. No more super chats today. Wait till tomorrow. So yes, have a good day. Until next time, I will properly see you later.